Welcome back to the Riga StratCom Dialogue 2021. And for this afternoon session, we are joined from a Riga castle by His Excellency Latvian President Egils Levits. Mr. President has been very much concentrating on the issues of disinformation, the new technologies, and those effects on the society. I think he's been one of those heads of state that has been really thinking about the future and how we can preserve the democratic principles and values against the risks posed by disinformation and the new technologies. And today we've invited His Excellency to share his thoughts on the way you think about the future of technology in relation to the future of society. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Sarts. Also, first of all, I would like to thank StratCom, Latvian StratCom, or NATO StratCom, and you personally, Mr. Sarts, for the organizing of this high-level conference. The topic of this conference is important not only for Latvia, but also for Europe as a whole, for NATO, and also globally. Because we all are in a new situation that we should cope with the development of technology, especially by social media, by digital technologies, and to ensure that the new technologies are in line with the principles of democracy. And it is not so difficult, and we will I know that you have already discussed in the conference this problem, but I'm happy and thank you that I can also share my views on this issue. So first of all, I would say some words about the relation between democracy and technology, then some thoughts where we are today, and at the end, some ideas what we should do in the next future. Also, first, this is a core issue. Who has a priority? The humans, or democracy, or the technology? And my firm opinion is, and I think is that 90% of the population in Latvia and elsewhere, that the humans should have the priority. Also, democracy is our future, is our present, but also our future. And the technology has to be aligned with democracy, with the democratic principles, and not vice versa. I would say openly, I became angry when I can hear such words that we can do nothing, the technology will develop anyway, and we should follow what the technology will give to us. No, it is our will, our principles, our task to manage the future and not to follow what the technology will do. Also, a priority, clear priority, political, legal priority of the democracy, and the democracy is the framework. Within this framework, then the technology should be developed in accordance with the principles of democracy, and not vice versa. And I see also that yet this balance and the priority of democracy is not yet achieved, and we are faced each year, each month, maybe each day, with new developments, and we are following that and trying to diminish the harms and also. So let me be clear: technology gives many advances for the humanity, for each individual, for the state. But there is also, not so clear, there are also harms. And we should spread the advantages from the harms and to promote democratically, to promote the advantages and to diminish the harms. And this is a task of the democracy, and that I mean with priority of democracy. If we are looking to the situation today, then I would say that one of the global and more important human rights organization, Freedom House, reports already 15 years consecutive that the situation of democracy is becoming each year, each 15 years, worse and worse. And I think this is a warning for all of us. There are different reasons, but also the reasons which are based on development of harmful development or doubtful development of technologies. There are also different reasons, but I think this is a warning so that we can say in general, so at the beginning of the 20s, of the 21st century, democracy is under attack from different sides on different levels, but democracy is under attack, and we should be aware of that and shape our politics in order to cope with this attacks. The COVID crisis has shown unexpected, also one weak side of our democracy. That, of course, COVID crisis was during the COVID crisis it was a need to restrict the freedoms of individuals, freedom of movement and so on. And we can see that more balanced approach have reached the democratic states. And also, I would say, more or less, also general success was better as in authoritarian states where there are not such a state limits to restrict freedoms of population. Also, this is also a strength of democracy. There is another strength. Democracy is the only state order which can adapt and learn from the failures. Autocracies, totalitarian regimes are learning very badly. And normally they're staying so long that they are broken down. We have this from the history. Democracy is adapting the rules, adapting the procedures in order to cope with the new situation. And I think this should be used also by the situation where the development of science, development of technology. Also, we should be creative and develop new rules. And I know that my colleagues, lawyers, are saying, no, we cannot do it because we have never done so. This is a completely new situation. But this is exactly the democracy. The democracy is always faced with new situation. And we have the strength and the will to adapt our system, rules, regulations, and so on, in order to cope with the problem. And this is also, it is one of the reason why we should stay Democrats. So we see also, especially during the COVID crisis, that also informational space became a battleground, battle space, online space, and it was absolutely obvious concerning misleading informations on the virus and so on. So we can say that there are also attacks to the, I would say, factual truth, and I think philosophically we should say that there exists a factual truth. If we deny that, then we can go home. So then it's no need to speak further. Also, if we can accept that, this axiom, so, and we can see that through misleading informations and false information, false narratives, you can manipulate the people. And this was a new experience, not only in Europe, but also in the whole world. Therefore, also United Nations has draw the attention on that. So, but it is also more specifically, I think democracy is not the only one state order in the geopolitical world, and also we have adversaries which are competing with democratic world, and they are also using technological means in order to weaken our system. And we can go further in that, but I will stop here. What means is a hybrid war and so on. So concerning the specific issue, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and misleading informations, misleading factual informations, and hate speech. Democracy means that the freedom of speech is so unrestricted as possible. There are only very far away, there are borders, there are limits. Hate speech, factual misinformations. There are two different categories. I would not mix up them. So, and within this big space, we enjoy the freedom of speech. And I think this is the core of democracy, but also the core of human being, because human being is thinking, and you should think freely. So this is not only a question of political order; it's a question of humanity. So, and let me finish with my specific, maybe we can discuss this further, with a proposal which European Commission made on 15th December last year. This is Digital Service Act. This is a proposal, and now the member states are invited to discuss it. In the approach of the European Commission is very good, so that we should have some regulations in internet space. But I completely agree with that. But I completely disagree with the approach how to do it. So the proposal provides that the big internet platforms like Facebook, Google, and so far, there are 4, 5, 6, we all know them, they should control the content, what the people are saying in this space, and set the limits. And I think this is completely wrong approach. It is not for Mr. Zuckerberg or another person to control the limit of our freedom of speech. It is for the democratic parliament, for the government, for the society to say our limits are there, and the limits could be also a little bit different from one country and another. I can say an example. For example, the signs of the Soviet regimes are forbidden because of historic reasons in Latvia and in many other Eastern states. In America, it's not forbidden. Should we, if we would take this general universal approach, say in Latvia, no, you in America, you should delete this signs? No. I think we should be aware that the democracy has priority, what I said at the beginning, and also to set a system of control, of limit setting by state authorities which are democratically legitimated and also responsible. It is not for the crowd to say what I can say or not say, not for the crowd. It is for the officials which are responsible, which are not anonymous, which are known and which are responsible for that. I think this is the right way how to set the limits. And it is clearly that for hate speech, for false informations which could cause big harm, there should be a limits, but how to do it and who is doing that? This is the question. So I will say that we in Latvia, because of our experience of totalitarianism, we should be always on the side of free speech, of the freedom, and not of the side of censorship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Many interesting points to pick up on, but I'll start with this one on the freedom of speech. And I think whenever we discuss these subject matters, it's intense debate about how far it should go, who should decide, how we should implement in the into the digital world. But very recently, I think a few months ago, you made a public comment where you said, in relation to one case that happened in Latvia, for the viewers, it's two local intellectuals were kind of censored by Facebook, and you said that we are in a position where the decisions on the freedom of speech of humans are made by the machines. And I thought that's an interesting conclusion that I personally haven't thought that in this context. But doesn't that tell us the story that while we as a society, political systems are debating, the technological companies are doing in the way they understand, in the way that is good for their business model, and we are bound to be behind all the time. Can we catch these companies?
Yeah, thank you for this very good question. Of course we can. The business companies are using our legal framework. They are depending from the rules which we have made on European level, on national level, to a certain extent also on international level. They are not completely, they are completely empty space. So, but the rules are made, and should be made by the governments, by the democratically elected parliaments and governments. And we can change the rules. We can say that also in the last 100 years, there were a lot of change of new development of rules, regulations concerning techniques. Also at the end of the 19th century, there was no traffic rules because there was no cars. And then after 10, 15 years, there was many cars, and then the parliament or the government decided, oh, it is too dangerous, we will make traffic rules. Of course, this is the answer. The same in a more serious way, it was by use of atomic energy. There are very, very strict rules how to use the atomic energy on European level, but also national level and also international level, different. And it is the same situation when the side effects that you were saying are to detriment of our democratic order, then we should change the rules in order to preserve it. But you said the right point. The starting point is the business model. The business model is so to say, not over all other considerations. I can also have a business model. Maybe it is to detriment of my neighbor, but I am saying, no, it is my business model. You should respect that. No, I think this is that, as I said at the beginning, it is for the democratic governments and parliaments to set the rules, to change the rules if needed. And I think that not the democracy fails to serve people in the new era of technology. It's the weak leadership of democracy. It's the weak politicians who failed, not the democracy.
There's a saying that good times create weak leaders create difficult times create strong leaders. I hope we don't have to go through that pattern this time. But on your points, I would like to kind of exploit a little bit more on this of this machine and how much do we give to the machine? There are some scholars that argue that once the AI is sufficiently developed, AI will be capable to do much more quality decisions than the humans. And I think that's also something, you know, fundamental. Also from the process perspective, from philosophical, from moral perspective. Do you think we are or will be ready to give decisions about fundamental things to the machines in the future? And do you see it near or is it far?
Yeah, I think that is a very important issue, and very important issue right now, because we are at the beginning of this development. And this development is going, we'll say, by small steps, but one time we can see already that the control over humans is more or less now is co-control, I would say, but also in few years, maybe in 10 years, we would be under the auspices of the technology. And I think this is the core of humanity and of philosophy, and what we are seeing, what we are thinking, what are human beings. And since the secular era, when we got free from religious, so to say, over control, then we are taking the control over ourselves by the individuals. This is the idea of the Enlightenment since 400 years. We are self-governing subjects. And to give up this self-governance, self-determination, it's a big decision. And if you are asking the people around, I think no one will say, I will give up my self-governance, myself, in order that the machines will better know what I should have and what I should wish. This is also what I should wish. So, but the development is not so obvious, but step by step. And this is dangerous, because you can see. I have discussed this in a specific area. Here we had a conference 2 years ago in Riga about artificial intelligence in judiciary. Whether artificial intelligence can replace human judges. And the answer was no. Artificial intelligence can help the judges to decide. And this is only, and this should be kept to help, but the decision should be made by the human judges. But I would say this is a general principles. Artificial intelligence and technology can help. The real problem is, if you are going a little bit more close to that, where is the limit between help and decision? If you have a very good collaborator and he is preparing your decision, you are reading maybe a little bit more superficially because you are trusting him and assigning the decision. And I think this is also a temptation. We should also give attention to that. And we discussed this in a specific issue, whether artificial intelligence can prepare a draft judgment. Obviously, it would be a good draft. And you are, so to say, a little bit lazy and not want to discuss with artificial intelligence and completely saying, but it's more or less convincing. I think this is also a problem, but this is more specific problem. But we discuss this in the framework of judicial decisions. But in principle, it is the same in all decisions. Also, the general line is artificial intelligence technology is only should be only designed to help, but not to replace human decision, because then we can come back to religious over control, and I would say that would be a big step back in the development of humanity. But we are in a dangerous situation.
Mr. President, I can confess I wholeheartedly agree, but some of the scholars say that, in fact, due to the medical advancement and the way AI will be able to advance the medical systems and the way we are treated, we will eventually give it up just to have a chance to live longer and better. But that's probably for another discussion. We have now a few questions from the audience, and one I think is also quite interesting. United Nations Human Rights Framework was developed in analog era. Should we reconsider them in the light of the digital possibilities, or is it universal enough?
The principles are universal, but the situation, how to use these principles, how to implement these principles is now, the environment is different. And I will plead for adaptation. As I said, democracy is a very adaptive system, to adaptation the system to the new technological possibilities. Also, first of all, I would say that that internet should be declared as human right to internet. We have also analogous situations. In the 70s, I can small example say, it was in the 50s and the 60s, in the last century, television was a luxus. But since the 70s, it is also recognized by law that everybody has the right to TV. Maybe not in Latvia, but to TV. And it is, if your house is sold, you can keep some things, bed and desk and so, but also TV. It belongs to the existential things. And now I think also the access to internet belongs to existential things. If you are denying people access to internet, then of course you can live without that, but you cannot live in a manner where you are member of society, you are excluded. This is one example, and there are other examples. I would also say concerning the big internet platforms, what is good in the new regulation of proposal of the new regulation of the European Commission is the first time in the history, I would say, the big internet platforms are defined. What are such platforms? The definition is clear. If the platform reaches 10% of the European population, that means 45 million people, then it is by category big internet platform with a specific responsibilities. And not all small internet shops are in the same responsibilities. It is also a kind of adaptation to the new system. But I would say that we cannot count these big internet platforms as a normal companies, normal shops, normal kiosks where you can buy the press. Formally, from the judicial point of view, they have the same status, and it is completely different. I think we should treat the big internet platforms like, for example, another example from 300 years ago, the post. The post service was established in the 17th, 16th, 17th century. So you can send the letter from one person to another. But as human right is provided for, so the post should transport the letter, not to read it, not to control it, not to censor it. And I think this is the right analogy to the Facebook and other. they should convey it to the people, but not to censor. By the way, the censorship which is provided for in the regulation is not called openly censorship, but content moderation. But in principle, and I will say anyway, censorship. You can also in authoritarian regimes say not censorship, but content moderation. This is censorship, and we should not commit these platforms as a censorship. This is the task for the state bodies, state institutions, where to set the limits to the freedom of speech. So this is also also for discussion, that the big internet platforms should not be treated as the normal companies, which we have thousands and millions. They have a special situation like the Post, and especially like the Post. Our in Latvian Constitution, Article 96, like in other constitutions, there is specific regulation, human and fundamental right, specific was the Post, or the Post, Telegraph, and Telecommunication, by the way. And I think this is also a way we can approach this situation.
Well, we just in a previous panel discussion had the representative from Facebook who said that they're really looking forward to regulation. I'm not sure how sincere that was, but certainly I think there is an understanding of that. But it has taken years, it has taken many years to produce one where the symptoms of a problem, I think, have been, at least from a practitioner's perspective, visible for some time. So with the notion that, as you said, we're approaching a very, very tricky point when technology's potential impact and speed of delivering technologies might really change everything we know about society. Can we still keep that gap in between technological reality and the ability to do the regulation, which is in average, I think, at best 5 years? Isn't that too dangerous?
It is dangerous. We should do it relatively quick, but we need a broad discussion, not only by the experts, but by the society also. That will take time. And I think, therefore, I hope that this new proposals of the European Commission will give an impulse to such a discussion. And I know also many human rights organizations are already worried about this situation, like me. And we are one of the 27 member states of the European Union. And I assume that Latvia will also be heavily involved in this discussion in order to keep this freedom. But there is another analogy. The problems of environment and climate. The beginning of the climate, or I would say rather environmental pollution discussion, was in the 70s, in the 80s, 50, 40 years ago. And it takes 10, 20 years. The green parties in all European states were established. And now the green idea, or the idea that the our environment should be protected, is a common idea. It's not more for the Greens. It is for all parts of the society. And it takes a certain time. So in the last 20 years, maybe 10 years only, now we have a big discussion, global discussion on climate. And 20 years ago, it was maybe a small circle of scientists which warned of that. So I see there is a certain time, but also if there is a need, a real need and a real problem, like environment, protection environment, like climate, and also this which could touch I would say our humanity. I would say in these broad words, this technology is touching our humanity. And I think if we are discussing that, then maybe not next year, but maybe in 5 years, there would be already a broad discussion about that, and maybe at the end of this decade, we will have a good regulations. I say this proposal of the European Commission is the first step. It's good, but also a wrong approach in my view. But we can, as member state, try to correct that in the right direction, and also to help to intensify this dialogue and this discussion about this problem, because some people are saying this could be the last problem of the humanity.
Well, Mr. President, thank you very much for your very interesting, thought-provoking thoughts. And I think what we can say is the stakes are high. And as you say, and I think if you think about it, it might be the last problem of humanity, hopefully not. And we're going to solve it. But the stakes are high, and we have to act. And as we speak, as you said, democracy is under attack. But what we should rely on is on the strengths of democracy being the one system that can really adapt. And for that, I think we all have to work so that we create the world where it is not our last problem. There will be future problems as well. Thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for sharing the thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sachs, for this discussion. And I hope also that this would not be the last problem, and that humanity will disappear after that. So I hope that we will have many problems after the solving of this problem. So, but I think this is a very serious discussion, and thank you for all participants of the conference to share their views on that, and it is also a contribution to solving the problem. Thank you very much, and good discussion.
Thank you very much. And now to another problem, and that is deterrence, and how to do deterrence in the modern circumstances, and how to create a new thinking about the deterrence. And with that, I pass over the word to Una Berzinya-Cherenkova.
Thank you, Director.
Maintaining national security means influencing the decisions and approach of malign actors to discourage or restrain them from taking harmful actions. As Western countries grapple with the prospect of facing increasingly ambiguous threats that are often hard to detect, deterrence is back in the spotlight. From hack and leak operations to the use of chemical weapons, what once was